Hello, hi everyone. Welcome to this Fireside Chat on the digital business integration through connected enterprise. I'm your host of the evening today, Sushant Rabra from KPMG, and I have two industry eminent speakers who have joined us today in the Fireside Chat. Mr. Girish Kulkarni, he's the chairperson of College of Healthcare Information Management Executives, India chapter, and Mr. Pavan Kolahal, Head of Enterprise and New Business of Asia and India in Ericsson. A very warm welcome to both of you as you join our panel today.
Thank you,
Thanks so much
Sushant.
for coming.
Thank you, Sushant.
Thank you. So, dear audience, today we have the two leaders amongst us, and we would be taking their thoughts on what does it mean to be an integrated digital business. We hear a lot about what digital is doing to transform the economy and businesses, and we hear about technologies like 5G or IoT, AR, VR, AI being thrown around pretty much in every second sentence. But the reason why we thought we'll set up this fireside chat is let's take a view from industry practitioners on what do we have as a real opportunity landscape and what do we need to do to make India a hub of success in that particular area. So to get the ball rolling, may I request thoughts from Mr. Pawan on the topic, if you want to start with your initial thoughts on the subject and how do you see next 3 to 5 years panning out for India?
Right. Thank you so much, Sushant. It's great to be a part of this forum. So to begin with, what we would like to highlight is, as you rightly said, enterprises are going ahead with digital transformation. And the reason is because they see business value, right? Now, when we talk about business value, we're talking obviously of return on investment. We're also talking of things which go much beyond that, right? You have effects that go much beyond just the immediate investment case. So when we look at the industry and from our perspective, we see 5G as one of the key enablers from a digital transformation perspective. We have done a survey across enterprises globally, including India. We have seen a huge potential of ICT-enabled production with tools such as AI, video recognition, analytics, remote controls of machines, AR, VR, etc. And we see industries like automotive and transport, food and beverage, specifically within manufacturing, taking a lead in this area. We also see a lot of initiatives, especially in manufacturers involving 5G as part of their journey. So one of the results we got is 8 to 10 manufacturers expect 5G to be introduced over the next 5 years. From an India perspective, again, a lot of potential. We see a huge opportunity for the CSPs or the telcos as well. We did a study recently, and we see a huge opportunity beyond their existing revenue from the normal mobile broadband service. So I will get into more details on the opportunity, the key use cases, the industries in which they can focus on. But to put it in perspective, right, when 4G came, it was enabler which stimulated the app economy, right? Now in 5G, we see the same, but we see more of that. It will not only be consumer, but it will also be business. And we basically see 5G as a platform for innovation and growth. So that's the high-level summary or pitch from our side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pavan. I think you covered pretty much all the elements that we hope to cover, and we will definitely take a leaf out of what you mentioned today. For now, let me move to Girish, as he has a perspective to add more from practitioners and especially from a healthcare perspective. So, Girish, your initial comments and thoughts on the subject, please.
Thanks, Sushant. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks, IMC, for calling me over and then getting me here to share my thoughts with everybody. Well, it's been a very tough time from a healthcare provider perspective over the last 18-20 months. It's been terrible for us, as it has been terrible for everybody across the country. But then the better side of things, the way it has spanned is the market, the healthcare provider space today realizes that technology and their IT is no more a back office function, but it is a very prominent leading business role in the entire schema of things, right? Digital has been around for a very long time. I mean, it's been used uh, in very different contexts by very different people. But then the way healthcare and digital technologies here evolved is with healthcare 1.0, which was late 90s, computerization of medical records. Then 2.0 came sometime early 2000, where we looked at online availability of health data, not though real time, but 3.0 was the advent of the EHR and the EMR instances. And today we talk of digital health from a connected enterprise perspective for any healthcare provider, and we call this as healthcare 4.0, the way you have um, industry 4.0, manufacturing 4.0. However, I tend to completely agree with one of the remark what Pavan made at the end of his opening statement, where we said, where he says the technology was probably being held back a little bit, and then it was all restricted to the app, and then it's moving away with the advent of newer technologies like 5G, which is expected to get rolled out in the country pretty soon. And if that happens, there's going to be a humongous amount of value the network and the fabric can bring for a healthcare provider.
Thank you, Girish. And as you mentioned, I think everybody is quite excited about the new use cases. We have spoken about the traditional two ladders of care: care at home, care at the hospital. But with the digital modes coming in, there are multiple intermediate tiers of care which are getting created, not just for care, but also for diagnosis. And that's where the entire connected model of the ecosystem is working very nicely. So let me then request thoughts from both of you about certain examples, certain use cases that have caught your attention in the last, let's say, a few months, where you think some of these things are working together fairly nicely. I know it may not be perfect, but maybe still a good start.
Okay, thanks, Sushant, and thanks, Girish, for the comment. I fully agree with you. I think there's a huge transformation we can do in the healthcare industry as well. Maybe to just get started on this, Sushant. So basically, what we believe is one is obviously trying to figure out and help the enterprise understand their own journey, and also work very closely with our customers, telcos, in being part of that journey. But what we have also done globally is we have kind of also taken in our own medicine, right? So we have implemented some of these programs in our own factories across the globe. One of the examples that I would like to highlight here is recently what we did in our factory in Louisville, Texas. So Ericsson created a state-of-the-art facility. We've invested more than 100 million US dollars in that factory, over 300,000 square feet and 200 robots. And what we see is a very clear case of automation where we get 25% more efficiency compared to a similar setup. It's 100% completely powered by renewable energy. And if you see in terms of productivity, we're talking of at least 2.2 times improved output per person compared to a similar setup, right? So basically what we see is as we implement this across our own facilities, we get the complete, you can say conviction that this is something that will definitely work, right? And most of the use cases that we have implemented there are use cases which are either improving the productivity or reducing the cost, right? So these are the two key areas in which we focus on. Some of the use cases that we have implemented, I think we touched upon it right in the beginning, but maybe just for the sake of emphasis, AR/VR is something which is very important, whether it is diagnosing a problem, getting a remote expert to dial in, or whether it is, a training an existing employee in learning new skills, very important, enabler. And then beyond that, we are talking about AI. So AI is something that you can apply based on what you're doing, take the inputs, come back with a real time kind of a feedback, or also do a lot of learning on the cloud and coming back with a lot of improvements. These are some of the use cases that we have deployed in US, and there are a couple of other use cases which I would like to highlight, which we have done in other facilities. One of the use cases we have deployed in Nanjing, China, is there was this screwdriver which is basically working on the radio, doing the assembly. The whole work was done manually. You had a person going there, checking the screwdriver every time it works, making sure that it works, and then noting it down on a piece of paper. What we did is we just connected a sensor to the screwdriver. They started giving us all the data so we could monitor remotely. We could do predictive maintenance, and all the recording of that particular activity was automated completely. So in effect, we got the benefit of digitalization. We could free that person and train him to do other tasks which were obviously adding more value. The last use case which I would like to highlight is something we call inventory counting. So if you see any facility that you have, whether it's a warehouse or even outdoors, you always have this task of someone going and checking what has been sold or what is currently left, and keeping track of it. And this exercise is time consuming. Sometimes it could also be a bit of a safety hazard if you have a lot of equipment and then you need to obviously in some cases climb. So we have started doing this inventory count using drones. So we have drones which can do it in the middle of the night when you have a downtime, and it works really well because the drone has got the capability to do the scanning, send the data back, and it saves a lot of time and effort. And this is something that can lead to a lot of benefit. And again, redeployment of people who are doing this to get trained for better tasks, right? So these are some of the top high-level use cases that I think are something that reflects the benefit and also are fairly generic across different industries.
Thank you, Pavan. And as they say, when you trust something, you use it at home, right? So while you're doing this for many clients across the world, now that you've used this in your own factory and you spoke about impressive numbers there, in terms of ROI, there's no question, which clearly showcases that there is a value case clearly for using these technologies in that ecosystem. And if I was to, expand that a little bit more, maybe I'll go to Girish and request his thoughts. The examples that you have seen in the healthcare domain or even wider domains of digital and technology being used very, very effectively.
Right. So from where I started, I was talking about 4.0 in healthcare, which is the digital health. And today we look at tech as a survivor for most of the healthcare providers. You need to adapt, and you need to adapt very fast, right? Now, why does this need come up all of a sudden is the question. Now, traditionally, healthcare has been always associated with illness, and illness today we are looking at moving it in various forms, various stages, various steps towards wellness, right? It's moved from a situation where it was reactive care. Okay, reactive care then moved to predictive care, and today predictive care is moving to preventive care, right? And to deliver preventive care to my patients who are my customers, I need a lot of data. I need a lot of compute to make sure that my predictive models, my analytics, everything works pretty seamlessly so that the outcomes from any of these associated platforms are meant to be used effectively on my patients. So we moved from reactive, predictive to preventive care, right? Now, in this journey, the technology has been the biggest enabler. 25th of March last year, when the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare opened up the complete regimen on telemedicine, it actually opened a large number of doors the way I could go and reach out to my patients. Traditionally, a hospital is a place where people would come in. But then this changes now completely, where the hospital is going to the patient. And that only can get enabled if I'm digitally, technologically ready to go and deliver services to my patients. Telemedicine has been the biggest example, the most uh, widely deployed tool in the last 2 years in this country as an outreach process, right? So what happens here is there's no single rule for every organization which fits everybody, right? You need to take those small steps which you think is relevant for your organization and take healthcare to your patients. Now, having said that, there are a lot of things which are extremely important, but at the crux of this is patient centricity or patient care, which is the most essential thing. So how do we do it? How do we deliver it? Has opened new doors. All these years, hospitals, healthcare providers were very, very skeptical going to the cloud, very, very skeptical looking at decision support systems, because they said, my surgeon, my clinician knows better than any operative system which could tell him or her what he needs to do to the patient now, right? But that has changed. The clinical decision support systems have become very relevant today. The cloud has become the fundamental layer on which all this happens. And at the click of a button, you have data at your fingertips, which is there available to treat your patient more effectively than you actually did earlier. Telemedicine is the best use case. Right. There are very many multiple use cases with the newer technologies. I would want to refer to a very, very small use case here. This is something which we tried out using the virtual reality, augmented reality technologies, where we used Microsoft Kinect as a technology to deliver physiotherapy to our patients. Right. Traditionally, everybody would either have the physiotherapist come to you and then deliver the service, or you go to a center and avail your service, right? But today, what we've actually done is sitting on a command and console center. I have my physiotherapist looking at 5 different screens and 5 different patients, trying to understand whether he's been able to move his knee properly, what is wrong in his walk from the time he had a crash to what it is today, how has it shaped better. So I will be able to pick up all those nuances, and I have the engine at the back end which is churning out this data, making it meaningful, and telling my physiotherapist whether the entire regimen is on track or not. Reality today, we couldn't have thought of earlier, maybe 2-3 years back.
Thank you. No, thanks. And that brings it to life, right? So while Pavan, you mentioned about the technologies and how they work, it's like the applied side of technology, as Girish mentioned about telemedicine. It was waiting in the wings for a long time. Then suddenly it took off because the use case became so apparent to itself, and all the concerns around that just vanished, right? And then around the remote tactile sort of a solution which Girish spoke about. So it's a complete world out there, and I see this will have all the players working together to create value for the end customer, right? So as Girish mentioned, many players, and there will be role for somebody like Ericsson, there will be role for Girish, there will be role for healthcare providers and so on. So all these need to come together. So just wanted to understand, Pavan, it's a very complex problem to be solved, stitching this ecosystem together. What are your thoughts on bringing this ecosystem together and creating new ideas, new propositions for the customers?
Right. Yeah, thanks, Sushant. And thanks, Girish, for sharing. I think that was very insightful. Absolutely something that, we see in other industries as well, that not one company or not one entity has the complete solution, right? You just need to work together. You need to identify your strengths. You need to identify areas where you can collaborate. And there are definitely opportunities for everybody in the market. If we kind of look at the landscape, right? I mean, if I kind of take it back to a little bit of a more of a manufacturing setup here, or anything similar, if you look at the landscape, you already have your existing IT and OT setup, which is running on the floor. Some of them are kind of brownfield, some of them are partially greenfield. Then you can see that the whole compute push is coming from the cloud. So you have the cloud players offering you different models, typically hybrid models, a combination of on-prem edge computing, or could be in the centralized cloud. And then you have device and application players, all of them playing their role. The device players are still evolving, especially if we talk about a technology like 5G. We see that rapidly evolving over the last, say, couple of years. The latest report, which we have seen from GSMA, indicates that we have probably more than 900 different devices available on 5G today. So we see that ecosystem building here. Then on the application side, you have the traditional players who have been there, who have been into manufacturing, whether it is creating this MES, which can take in all the data, give you the overview, or you can also new application vendors. And the key here is also to enable the participation of startups here. Like we talk about companies coming in, creating some new applications which haven't been there before. This could be like a drone-based system, which is basically doing similar to what we discussed, could be inventory control, could be surveillance, or it could be doing AGV guidance, right? Remote, the vehicles, automated guided vehicles, which are running on the shop floor. So we see a very good chance of collaboration here. And from our perspective, we have been reaching out to everybody. Obviously, we work very closely with our customer, but we have been building the ecosystem, not necessarily to directly benefit from it, but to also stimulate the ecosystem. So when we go and approach a customer, they are aware that Ericsson is not only bringing a technology or a platform along with the telco, but we also have ecosystem partners who understand that particular domain. So if you are talking about, for example, an industry like mining, we have been deploying networks with mining companies over the last couple of years, whether it is in Canada, whether it's in Australia. And what we do is we work very closely with the industry OEMs there. Could be players like, say, a Caterpillar or a Komatsu, understand the requirements and make sure that our solution is able to address those requirements. So, absolutely, I think ecosystem play is probably the most understated part of this opportunity because and again, one thing we need to understand here, Sushant, is it's not like everyone is used to working in this way, right? So traditionally, we never had cases where the SIs, the telcos and the cloud players, in some cases kind of come together and collaborate. So it's also about understanding the business model in which you will collaborate, whether it is going to be a CapEx or OpEx, or in some cases even an outcome-based model where you're trying to measure the benefit and then figure out, who will do what. So right now, we think it's a very open field. We see a lot of ambition from everyone. So I think this is something that will evolve. In India as well, we have started already seeing discussions happening between the telcos, between the industry players, and kind of trying to come together and figure out what is the best approach. And of course, we are waiting for the launch of 5G. Hopefully, that will happen soon, and we will start seeing some real action.
Sure. Thanks, Pavan. And I couldn't agree more with you on that. Eventually, the value will get created when every player in the ecosystem contributes their part and makes it come alive. And I think everybody will have a play at that. Now, going back to, I think, the healthcare as a domain, as was picked up by Girish earlier. Now, Girish, I mean, India is a large country, and we have been making great strides in healthcare, but we sort of run against a talent crunch in many scenarios, and it was clearly visible during the COVID times, right? So just want you to take your thoughts on how that can be addressed, and is there a way where digital or technology will have a role over there?
Well, absolutely yes. There's no two ways about it, no second thought about it. Talent has always been a major constraint in healthcare delivery, definitely here in India, be it the ratio of the total population size to the beds available, be it the number of trained professional bedside care providers to the number of beds which are available, right? So there are very many places where we have had major issues with the talent, and the industry is again prone to a huge amount of crunch. The attrition rates in some of our employee groups are extremely high. You get people in batches of 100 200, and they leave in batches of 100 200, and it's like they leave by the end of the day. There's nothing like a notice period or anything like that. So having understood this, we still have to deliver patient care, right? And the fundamental way to do it today, and the hospitals realize, is you need to be digital. You need to go digital. You need to get on to the bandwagon. And depends on which part of the journey you are. If you've already been an early adapter, you now move towards sustaining whatever you have done and enhancing or improving upon what you have done. But if you have not yet started your journey, it's not too late. It's good to start now. But then, when you're looking at your digital journey, there are 5 fundamental things which are to be borne in mind, generically from every industry, but then very particularly from healthcare, primarily because talent and resource is extremely low on availability, right? The first P here is patient centricity. Everything what you do, how you do, where you do, when you do is around your patient. Patient not there, then you don't exist, right? The second one is how predictive is your digital build going to be, right? Does it allow you to look at real time data, real time alerts about your patient, not just looking at his current uh, current situation or whatever it is. So there are very many things which we need to look at. But more important here specifically is the use cases which we will look at. How do we actually make good the gap from a talent and a resource perspective, right? So, having said this, we looked at, we spoke about telehealth. We have AR, VR technologies now, which is replacing a lot of human effort which has gone in there. So that is sort of bridging the gap there. We spoke about decision support systems, which enables clinicians to make better, faster, and informed decisions. Then we have high performance computing, which can deliver the required outcomes to the clinicians at the point of care. We could look at very secure networks, because the trust factor on looking at using and adapting the cloud has increased exponentially today from a healthcare perspective. Yeah. So there are a lot of these use cases, a lot of these very specifically, which looks at what and how quickly you bridge the gap and you still deliver services to your patient.
Sure, perfect. So thanks, Girish, for sharing those thoughts on how the overall talent landscape will play out. Now, if I was to go to Pawan and switching gears more from the overall technology dimension, and we are seeing a lot of innovation happening on IoT and 5G and so many other areas, right? Now, how does that play out in the enterprise space? What are the areas where you believe this is sort of working well, and possibly areas which need more attention? So, if you can share your thoughts on that.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Uh, Thanks, Sushant. So, just to highlight a little bit on the landscape, right? We spoke, I think we came starting from a top-down approach in the overall benefits, the landscape. We talked about ecosystem. Now, if you specifically talk about the current landscape of the enterprise, especially from a connectivity perspective, right? Uh, Obviously, we see that they're focused on the business value. They're also trying to make sure that the team or their employees who are involved in this are also being part of the journey. So it's a step-by-step approach, right? To make sure that you have the right technology, to make sure that you can scale the technology and you can apply it, and use it on a daily basis. But keeping that in mind, if you see currently where they are, they are currently using a lot of different technologies from a connectivity perspective, right? And these are technologies which have also evolved along with them, whether it is Wi-Fi or fiber or anything else that they're using. For example, Tetra, we see a lot of use of the push-to-talk handset, especially in outdoors, whether it's a mine or a port. Now, the challenge with these technologies is they have not really scaled in terms of their capabilities. So some of them do not give you a predictable, kind of a QoS. Some of them lack mobility. Some of them do not have the security. And in today's world, latency, which is the time taken in to get a response, is very, very important. So essentially, we see a dearth of business and mission critical communication standards. And that is where we believe 5G is very well positioned. We talk about ultra low latency. We talk about response time less than 10 milliseconds, going all the way to 1 millisecond. We talk about very high bandwidths, upward of 5 to 10 Gbps. We talk about high location accuracy, ability to position a robo there, going all the way down below 1 meter and eventually going down to centimeters. And then we talk about device density. Let me give you a small example here. In Wi-Fi, for example, today, if you attach 10 devices, right, to a particular network, you have a response time in milliseconds. The moment you increase that to 100, the response time increases to seconds, because the technology is still not ready to cater to that kind of a demand. With 5G, we're talking about close to 1 million devices per square kilometer, giving you a very guaranteed response time and QoS, right? That's the way the technology scales. So if you see in terms of business, We are talking about production lines autonomously reacting to supply and demand, so that it's not fixed. We're not talking about fixed assembly line here. We're talking about a flexible, which is where the wires are cut, so you can actually, recast the jig, based on your actual requirement. We're talking about digital replicas that can warn about real-time machinery faults ahead of time. So we're talking about predictive monitoring. We're talking about digital twins. We're talking about logistic networks autonomously routing goods based on real-world conditions. So because you have real-time communication, because a network is capable of giving you mobility, you're able to enable that. Then full traceability down to the individual items, right? This is where your location accuracy comes in. And then remote access to powerful robots and vehicles. So imagine a person, it's happening today, sitting remotely and controlling a machinery underground in a mine. And what happens is he basically moves the machine on his screen, and the machine actually responds in the mine. And this is possible because of the low latency that 5G can provide you. So these are things that were envisioned a long time back, but in reality today, 5G is a technology which is actually able to deliver this. In terms of real value, we did study the market, and if I have to talk about our customers, the operators, we see a huge opportunity for them. In fact, as per our analysis, it's opening up a $17 billion opportunity to them by 2030. This is over and beyond their current revenues. They can offer services like slicing, which is coming from 5G, network slicing, dedicated networks, which is fully on-prem solutions, and providing enablers like service orchestration, which is basically a flexible or a dynamic engine which can control the network, and analytics. And finally, they can also offer solutions like applications and edge computing. So we see a huge role for our customers here. And as we mentioned, the use cases, I think we already covered it, but just to highlight, we're talking about enhanced video services, we're talking about AR, VR, real-time automation, monitoring and tracking. Now, coming to the next point, as you mentioned about security, since we spoke about so many different elements here, one of the real challenges is to make sure that you have an end-to-end security framework, whether it is devices connecting to the network, the IT, OT infrastructure, the cloud, which is where you open up yourself to potential cyber attacks, and obviously the applications themselves. What we are trying to highlight is, from a network perspective, 5G is something which comes with the best possible security and encryption, encapsulation, and it's all baked into the standards, right? So what you're getting is something which is state of the art, which can provide you high reliability and availability. And I think that's something that we are guaranteeing as a foundation. Obviously, we will have to work with other industry players to make sure we secure the devices, applications as well. So that's just an overview in terms of the opportunity for the enterprise, for the telco, and how we look at security from an end-to-end perspective.
Great. Thank you, Pavan. Thanks for holistically covering that and various dimensions on that. So I'm also keeping an eye on the watch. So last few minutes, if we can request both of you to sort of respond to this adoption theme. See, we established that there is a large value out there. There are use cases out there. We have the right technology, and as you were explaining about Ericsson's platform and solutions, so it looks like there is a fair degree of mature technology which is out there, which is ready. And of course, there is certain adoption that has happened, as Girish mentioned, around telehealth and so on and so forth. So for this to be really turbocharged, one from the industry lens and one from a technology lens, what are the 2 or 3 enablers that would be top of your wish list in that sense? If you both can give your views in next couple of minutes.
Let me start. Okay. So Pavan spoke about the ultra low latency. Now, ultra low latency networks going to be extremely important, critical, and crucial for us from a perspective of delivering high level of ambulatory care, or you have clinicians collaborating with each other, sitting across continents, sitting across the other side of the globe. You have situation where the clinical data has to be churned, analyzed by the surgeon at the other end, a split-second decision to be taken and executed in the theaters, right? So this ultra low latency, highly reliable, high quality network is something which is extremely critical for us. The next thing, which is again very important, is high quality streaming of files and images. Today we are ready to move all our imaging onto the cloud, which was sort of very, very difficult earlier. You would not think of, let's say, one huge file, which is typically running into about 700, 800 gig on a PET-CT scanner, to be moved onto the cloud and then analyzed by various people across from their homes or from their facilities, wherever they were available. But today, if we have technology which can give us high quality streaming services, nothing like it. PET-CT read across becomes very easy. Not just about PET-CT, any imaging moving to the cloud, the entire data onto the cloud is extremely seamless and simple, right? So this is something which are definitely enablers for us. Apart from this, the last and the most important thing is the reach and the mobility perspective of it, which will allow healthcare providers to take healthcare to those extreme nook and corners of the country where healthcare today has still not reached, or even if it has reached, it is not available or unaffordable.
Perfect. Thank you. You summarized it very well, Girish. Latency, availability, reach, and how this all work together. Pavan, any final comments from your side? What are the key enablers that you would like to see?
Sure. So I think, Sushant, there's one more aspect which I just want to quickly address, right? I mean, one of the key questions, at least in our country, is how will the technology and the introduction of technology and automation affect the workforce? Are we talking about, laying off people? Are we talking about jobs going away? And this is something just want to emphasize. We see technology as a key enabler, and in the other facilities where we have deployed this, it has helped us automate the routine and mundane tasks, right? But these are necessary. So what we are talking about here is make sure that you get the basics right, and then you can actually retrain and redeploy. So we are talking about employees on the shop floor 5 years from now having a complete extension of their arms and the facilities to basically monitor what is happening on the production floor and get involved as necessary, as opposed to kind of getting rid of people. I think this is one of the key challenges we have seen in the country in terms of what we want to achieve from this. So the end goal has to be very clear. It is about achieving efficiency. It's about improving productivity, but it's also about inclusion. So ensuring that people are well trained. I think Girish spoke very well on the attrition, and that's where we have seen tools like AR, VR, digital training are becoming very relevant today because of the attrition rate, because of the gig economy that we see, and the blue collar, attrition rates specifically. I think training is becoming very important. So we need to make sure that, the organizations obviously need to make sure that their people are involved. The management is focused on the end goals, and we are all part of the ecosystem, and we drive it together. So that's just a brief summary, which is more of, I would say, an overall pitch rather than on any specific aspect of technology.
Thank you so much, Pavan. I think you covered it from the other dimension, saying while I was talking about enablers from the ecosystem, enablers within the business, and how that entire thing pans out. I must say this Fireside Chat has been a great learning experience for me as well. It's not every day that you get industry leaders to spend their valuable time to share their perspective on something that is so critical and important for the country. So let me thank both of you for sparing your time and sharing your insights with all of us here. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure to
Thank
be
you,
here.
Sushant. Thank you, Girish. Great to be here.
Fireside Chat, and all the best to have you for the
Thank you so much, Girish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sushant Rabra, and I'm your host for the evening, hosting this panel discussion with 4 industry leaders who are kindly consented to give their time to us and share their thoughts and experiences on this subject. First, let me welcome Mr. Prateek Pashine, President and Head Enterprise, Reliance Geo Infocom. Welcome on board,
Hi,
sir.
hi Sushant.
Hi. Let me move forward. Mr. Praveen M., Country Head, Business Applications, Microsoft.
Good evening, all.
Hi. Great to have you today. Let me move to Mr. Prakash Krishnamoorthy, Director, India, Aruba.
Hi, Sushant.
Hi, great to have you here. And finally, to Mr. Kartik Narayan, EVP Business Services, Strategic Accounts, Vodafone Idea Limited.
Hi, Sushant.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, for gracing the panel today. To begin, we would like to hear your thoughts on the overall topic, which is around digital transformation, which is through connected enterprise model and how digital and technologies can power our growth as a country. So maybe I'll start first with Mr. Prateek to share his opening comments on the subject.
Thank you, Sushant, and great to be amongst industry colleagues. This is, I think, a relevant topic and will be relevant for the next 20 years. How digital becomes front and center of all companies. And I'm reminded of this saying by, I forget the name of the gentleman, CEO of ABN AMRO Bank, and it said, "We are a technology company with a banking license." So I think all businesses, irrespective of the industry they are in, this whether they're a B2B company or a B2C, are going to be technology first, uh, and kind of having a focused approach. They could be in retail industry, they could be in chemicals, they could be in logistics, but they will be a technology first company. And I think uh, nothing has accelerated this more than the pandemic, where uh, a very stark reality. Before COVID, there were about 75 million businesses in the country. Somebody engaged, any business engaged in a commercial activity. That has shrunk to close to 50 million. So there's a third of those businesses that have gone. And it's a proven fact that businesses that have adopted technology have ridden this pandemic wave much better than the companies who haven't. So I think this is not good to have. This is not a general conversation. This is pretty much about survival and how uh, you embrace this and how you adopt it. I think technology also, what it does is it is a great democratizer. Uh, what was available only to the large and the big companies, today technology makes it available to a small medium business, and that truly kind of gives it the firepower that the small medium businesses need to kind of compete on a world stage. So I would just kind of leave it at that to start with. That I think this is a must. This is everybody's conversation, and this is for survival and then actually thriving in this new normal. That digital has to be the core strategy of any company.
Thank you, Prateek. I couldn't agree more. It's no longer an option, it's a matter of survival. If you look at it this way, then many other equations will make sense, which classically might not. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. Moving to Praveen, if you would like to share your thoughts on the subject, please.
Sure, Sushant. So, Prateek, right on the dot, right? And you captured quite a bit of what we are seeing in the marketplace today. And being with Microsoft, I can provide more of a software-centric view out here. And we are seeing adoption of cloud technologies left, right, and center, right? So either it's the core stack with Azure, or productivity with Office, or um, business applications with our dynamic stack. It's just booming across the board. Either it's a large enterprise or an SMB. Technology has become a non-negotiable in some sense for a lot of companies out there to manage the pandemic. Either how they run their businesses with remote work, or now increasingly hybrid work. Reliance on cloud technologies is becoming important. The on-prem model is beginning to get disrupted out there. So, and increasingly we see the adoption of technology to improve customer experience, especially in this hybrid world, right? If I take retail as an example, how do you enable that omni-channel experience, both from a store perspective and also an online buying perspective? How do you enable that? If you take again a banking example, how do you do that from a branch, or how do you enable that online experience again, so that you continue to provide a rich set of experiences for your customers. Whether it's B2B or B2C doesn't matter anymore. So we increasingly seeing adoption of technology across the board out there. And again, going back to enterprises as smaller businesses, right? In the SMB space, we're seeing a significant uptick of technology in SMB as well, looking for one-stop solutions for really managing their business, taking it to that next level, getting that visibility, driving compliance with government. All of that is becoming paramount to them. So again, we're seeing that across the board. So that's what we're seeing out there, Sushant. So over to you.
Thank you, Praveen. Thank you. And it's great that you brought in these additional flavors to the conversation. And I've just parked it. Probably I'll pick it up during the conversation as well. For now, moving to Prakash, if you would like to share your perspective on the overall digital and 5G and IoT revolution, which is shaping India the way we know it.
Yeah, wonderful, Sushant. I cannot agree more with the earlier speakers. Very clearly, it is a powerful transformative change. It is actually the integration of all forms of digital technology that we are used to playing with, right? It's about integration of mobility, cloud, and IoT. All those transformative pieces which can work independently, discreetly, and also can work in a cohesive. It is also all pervasive. It is clearly moving into all aspects of work, all aspects of life. It's about making our workplaces and homes hyper aware. So it's a sort of truly transformative. And enterprises in particular need to embrace them in different proportion and in different order as applicable to them, but they all need to embrace this change, because that's the only way they can continue to deliver value to their customers. So this is a new way of work, or I would say architecture, that enterprises need to embrace. They need to continuously disrupt, they need to continuously innovate, and they need to constantly bring value to everything that they do. And I think every enterprise needs to get comfortable enough to drive this change, because this is inevitable.
We hear the same theme from what Prateek mentioned to Praveen and Prakash. Survival, it's absolutely necessary and inevitable. So pretty much, I think, alignment on thoughts there. Kartik, would you like to add your thoughts to the conversation?
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. I think pretty much, most point covered, but let me just give it a shot. In my view, I think connected enterprise or digital transformation is essentially, of course, integrating of digital technology to all areas of business, right? Fundamentally changing how you are operating and delivering value to customers. But I think the important thing for us, all of us, to kind of remember is that different companies, and especially when you talk about small and medium enterprises, SMBs, all of them are in different phases, and it is shocking as to what phases they are in, right? And therefore, if you really look at it, there are many companies which are in the what I call digitization phase, right? I mean, a lot of things are still happening, let's say, on paper documents, and you got to kind of move them in the first step towards digitizing the entire thing. Or maybe, if I give another example, a large industrial gases company, which perhaps used individuals to walk through the assembly line and take in, all the readings, would perhaps now use sensors, right? And that's an example of a digitization. I think the second thing is when you are using it to kind of improve your process in itself, and that's really the next step. But of course, digitization is the foundation. For example, if you are sending physical invoices, and now you kind of put it into an entire process, and you're sending digital invoices, and that's like the next step. I think the third step is really what we are talking about, and it depends on the maturity of that particular organization. If you have, if you have digitized and you're digitalized, then you can do an enterprise, connected enterprise kind of a model, or you can do a digital transformation where everything comes together. So an example of that could be, right from the consumer demand which is taking place for, let's say, a product that you're having, and it gets completely connected back to your raw material supplier, right? And then if the entire thing is seamless, end-to-end connectivity, that's when you have kind of finally managed to reach your end goal of being able to transform the entire value chain. So in my view, I think there is no one size fits all kind of an approach. There is no technology first approach to digital transformation. I think all of us kind of owe it to large enterprises as we kind of connect and work with them to really see what is the fitment that they have and what is the stage that they are in their journey. That's my view.
Thanks. I think that brings a sort of a time view or evolution view to the entire axis that they need to see where they are and plan out the journey. And that I would say is a good segue to the next theme that we were hoping to cover. See, we hear about 5G, IoT, AR, VR, AI all the time, pretty much every second sentence these days, perhaps, and every second article in Economic Times. But if you were to sort of make it real and see what is the real innovation it's driving on ground, Prateek, if you can share your thoughts on what are the some examples which caught your eye recently around the business model innovation or innovation on ground using these technologies.
And while I think it would take the whole of the session to kind of talk of multiple myriad technologies that are there on offer, I'll pick up one, which is conversational AI. And I think of all the technologies that have seriously made a dent and is pretty much getting to up mainstream. That doesn't mean millions of businesses have adopted it, but now you see that very more often than not, at least in the large brands, uh, uh, through Haptic, which is a conversational AI company that we have, we've kind of enabled now customers to interact with the brands. And those brands are a utility brand for a customer to know his electricity bill, or it is a fashion brand, or it is a travel brand for him to book tickets on an airline. That the power of conversational AI to kind of ease off uh, one, a customer connect, two, to make it consistent brand experience, because if the call center agent had a bad morning, he may not he or she may not respond properly to the customer. But here is a consistent brand response. You making sure that the brand communicates to the customer in a particular manner, and I think that's led to adoption, including the adoption of bots that we are using for COVID certificates, and you just have to say certificate, and the whole certificate comes downloaded onto your WhatsApp. So I think the conversational AI is one technology that truly has seen the adoption, and I think the as we go, we will now see democratization of bots as well, of chatbots, when a small business can do a plug and play chatbot. And uh, that's one kind of a topic I thought I would cover. We've started seeing in our interactions with customer, while large enterprises are adopting it, we've started seeing adoption in the small medium business as well, and for different applications. It is could be for customer connect, it's also for learning and development. One of the professional services company has used it to train employees. So I think that's one technology that we're seeing as a significant use case.
Absolutely. And see, the interface between human and machine, well, that is being transformed, and that's conversational AI. And then, of course, voice is the new frontier. We see many more use cases coming in where pretty much the technology blends into the background, and then you sort of make use of that. So that's absolutely spot on. You were absolutely right that so many technologies, possibly we can discuss about it the entire 1 hour and still there will be content to cover. But considering it is an important point, I was hoping to take views from Praveen. If you want to add to that, maybe from a different technology or an industry perspective in terms of innovative use cases or business model innovations that you have seen on ground.
Right. I'll just add on the AR VR piece, right? So at least I used to think that, hey, this is futuristic, this is out there. But with the pandemic, what happened was this became more immediate and it became real very quickly. And our device for AR VR is getting launched in India this month, very timely considering the pandemic situation and all of that. So what we are seeing is both on manufacturing and healthcare side, increasing use of AR to one on the manufacturing side to help with service quality audits, maintenance and use cases similar to that, right? And there is real business value there. So you don't have to have an expert come down to visit a plant to help with break fix of expensive capital equipment out there. So you can just at least do part of the work remotely and solve some of those problems rather than wasting or expending more time trying to do some of that. More interestingly, on the healthcare side, which took me a little bit by surprise, was that there is increasing appetite for AR, and we're seeing that with some leading healthcare chains to use the tool to again get some of that expert connectivity to different locations, and also to provide, again, going back to what Prateek was talking about, right, to provide training and real-time experience to folks who might be sitting in other locations using the device and a tool at the other end, right? So just wanted to highlight how real this is becoming in today's world.
Sure. So, in other words, the future is here,
It is
and
here.
it's coming here faster than what you can think. So, pretty much spot on, Praveen. And if I was to now look at organizations which are looking at this future coming in, and if they haven't really charted their course, it could also be a bit scary proposition, right? What do I do about it? How do I actually chart out a successful implementation for initiatives such as these? So, Prakash, maybe coming over to you, what are themes that organizations should consider while they are navigating through this and considering successful implementation of many of these interventions on ground? Sorry, Prakash, you are on mute, I believe.
Sorry. That is a nice question, Sushant. See, the end state in a digital innovation exercise or a project is actually you make your workplace hyper aware, like I just mentioned it very briefly. And what you really do is you build digital interfaces to what are otherwise physical objects. And through the digital interface, you are able to draw data. From the data, you are able to draw insights, which is what happens on the cloud. And from that, you are able to increase effectiveness and improve experience. That's the end goal, right? So it is inevitable. So organizations will have to really prepare themselves on this journey a little before they jump in, right? And this does necessitate some improvements and modernization in the way they build their own organizational networks, because you are talking of very large number of devices, large number of things which have to connect, which have to move data and then push them onto the cloud, right? So it's a convergence of the ability to make all the devices and things come together, aggregate their connectivity, right? What we call an connected world or a connected factory or a connected home, connected building. So you need to connect them all together, right? And then you have to transport them to the cloud where machine learning modules really work, right? So it's a combination of two or three things. You could strengthen the app and then strengthen the IoT and then do it, or you can strengthen the edge and then go to the cloud and then bring in the IoT. That's the flexibility and modularity this technology provides. But clearly, the inevitable thing about moving forward is you need to make your edge completely a mobile first architecture, where connectivity of IT and devices are happening through technologies like BLE, Zigbee, the conventional 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio, etc. So your connectivity has to get fixed in the form of mobile first or a wireless first gateway, right? And then you backhaul them, right, all the way from your physical premise all the way to the cloud, where work gets performed and results get derived. The second part that organizations will have to plan is because you have made your environment hyper aware, a very large number of devices are going to get connected. So you need to bring in a higher degree of scale. you have to bring in a higher degree of capability and automation in order to manage this, right? So gone are those days when you could break the different elements and manage them discretely. An element management strategy, you'll have to move into an unified infrastructure management strategy where you are able to troubleshoot from the cloud into every element, be it wired, wireless, SD-WAN, IoT, all of them. You should be able to see them, troubleshoot them, manage them, monitor them off a cloud, right? That's the second part. You have to get prepared. So you need to be a little bit proactive and open to embrace cloud, right? In addition to making your workplace hyper aware with wireless. Third, we are talking a very large number of devices, so you need to prepare zero trust security, right? And that's very critical, otherwise you get into trouble. And lastly, if you are on the cloud, then and you have all the data, then you are completely having the ability to run machine learning modules to get all kinds of insights and get the outcomes you really desire, right? So those are the three steps I would like to place. Make your workplace hyper aware with mobility and wireless, then go in for unified management of cloud, and then build their complete platform on zero trust security, and then you would be able to get your end goal.
Thank you,
So
Prakash. I think
can I take a stab at Prakash? Slight uh, a different route. While I agree with him, uh, Prakash talked about mobile first and workspace, and this is something that we are seeing different. Okay, in the last 12 months, yes, mobile first is given, but the workplace definition has changed. Uh, a big company would have 50 offices, 100 offices. Now they have 50,000 offices because that's where the employee resides. And uh, while the first wave of pandemic, we kind of enabled all of those companies with our geofied dongle. The customers have become far more demanding because right now they realize that I don't have 50 offices or 100 offices or 1,000 offices. I have 50,000 offices or 100,000 offices. And those 100,000 offices, they're saying mobile is fine, but I actually want a wired connectivity. And in fact, give me both. Because if the disconnection happens, the employee is not productive. So we are seeing increasingly at the edge, which is now no longer the offices, but the residents, customers asking for multiple connectivity, security aspect, because you want to make sure that this data is secure. So uh, all of these which companies have been talking about doing it in the workspace, that workspace has become 100 times bigger. And that's where I think, how do you take all these technologies in a bite size, because what you have to replicate for 1,000, you now have to do it for 10,000 or 100,000. That I think is the key. And you will see, so it's not just going to be mobile first, it's going to be, do you have a fiber coverage in 1,500 towns? Because that's where my employees are. And I think that's going to become increasingly important. While mobile first, yes, I think the people are embracing and wanting dual, triple redundancy at the edge, which is now a customer's home or the employee's home.
No, Prateek, you are right. I just want to just build on what you said. Absolutely right. That the edge, the devices, the user, and the objects will connect on wireless, and this entire wireless or those access points or IoT gateways have to be backhauled to the cloud through wired. There is no two ways about it. Now today, let's look at your home. Right, you are connected to your office. Your wife is connected to her office. Your children are connected to the schools. They don't connect on wired today, right? And what makes them pervasive is they connect on wireless. And then the access point that you provide with the fiber, with the dongle as alternatives, multiple fibers, multiple dongles as highway, they will then backhaul you, right? So the edge, right, as we'll see rapid adoption of wireless. The backhaul will continue to be wired because that's the right way to move data and transport it in the fastest way. So we are talking the same thing actually.
absolutely. And I think for organizations which are just starting out, the principles that you laid out, Prateek and Prakash, they would be quite valuable to start thinking about how they should architect the entire story. So while we spoke about the organizations, but I think if I was to take a step back at a overall country level, right, or economy level, and when we are talking about network, providers, we have telcos, we have CSPs. Essentially, they pretty much now operate as a digital backbone on which all the functions of the economy are now working. So, Kartik, would like to take your thoughts at a broader level, saying what are themes which are playing out in that space? How is that evolving, and the innovation that you see in that particular domain?
Yeah, thanks, Sushant. I think first things first is I think communication service providers, at least or telcos, will have to kind of transform themselves into. I mean, they no longer should be called communication service providers. Honestly, they need to be called digital service providers in one sense. Otherwise, they risk not managing to cope up with that increasing demand from their networks. Right. Unfortunately, telcos who have kind of failed to keep up will get squeezed out by competitors that are already leveraging IoT, 5G, big data, and all that. I mean, we have seen the OTT part happening already. So few trends that we are seeing broadly is obviously everything as a service is a major way forward. Customers are, especially large telco customers, are really not looking at large capex investments in the past, and telcos have to look at how this can be enabled. The other thing is pay as you go model, basic subscription, and then tiered for any additional services that they might need. Customers obviously are willing to pay a premium if it's differentiated SLA. And of course, enterprise customers are essentially looking at a single stop shop. And I think the last part is a more important part. I think we are engaging with customers, many of them are coming back and saying, hey, listen, you already manage the core, the heart of all our services, right? Why can't you become a single stop shop by kind of working with multiple other best in class service providers and make this entire solution kind of work for us? Earlier, I was kind of tempted when you were asking for IoT cases and examples, and then two or three kind of came to my mind and more relevant. All of them seem to be in the realm of health and safety, given the current pandemic scenario. Some of the solutions we enabled were individuals in large factories, as they kind of walked in, analog camera, which obviously has now been enabled with AI and ML, and of course with connectivity, kind of screens them for body temperature and then records them, right? Or for example, if you have not kind of worn a mask, then it kind of picks it up and informs as well. I think those are some of the examples which really come to my mind as we are kind of engaging with customers. And I think from a more telco perspective, I think the other important thing is all of us are now kind of building platforms, right? So that it kind of builds for scale, and that's the strength of telcos to kind of serve wide and deep. We, for example, investing in big data, 5G, some of the demonstration we did last week, IoT, etc., and all that. So in my view, I think communication service providers really have to look at transforming themselves, looking at the way things are going. They no longer are going to be just core infra providers. They will need to kind of evolve along with the requirements which are coming from our customers.
Thank you. But thanks, and I think that it's not just a change of terminology; it's a change in mindset, right? So what you said about telcos from digital service providers or digital communication providers, that's the mindset change or the perception change that we need to drive on ground. Because frankly speaking, you are right. The portfolio of services providers are much wider than what it used to be. And in that sense, I would say they are pretty much instrumental, as I mentioned, to running of the entire economy. So it's pretty much based on that. Now, just taking that step forward, while we spoke about technology, and I recognize we are all technology folks on the call here, but sometimes the most difficult element to manage is the one sitting on the other side of the screen, which is the human element. So when we speak about the digital transformation, we oftentimes don't spend enough time on the change management, which is necessitated because you're now looking at a new operating model and so on. So Prateek, would request your thoughts on how to run this in tandem, because this itself is a fairly complex domain for organizations to manage.
Sure, Sushant, and I'll give you one data point. B2B SaaS players in the country, 95% of them have a base less than 500 customers. Okay, and why is that so? Because they are not able to showcase, they're not able to build organization. They're not able to train the customer of what is the need and how this need is fulfilled, and this needs hand-holding of the customers across the length and breadth. And that's why if you say 95% of the B2B SaaS players have customer base less than 500, you know the answer. They've done well in their city of origin, but they're not able to take it nationally. I think uh, another data point, India's ICT spend as a GDP is about 2.3%. Is 1.4 compared to China, which is at 2.4%. So we are half of China in terms of our ICT contribution to GDP. That's because of ours being a hugely supply constrained market. So do companies have money to adopt digital technology? The answer is yes. If you give them a business case, you give them a ROI model, they will adopt. But they don't have, I mean, large enterprises have CIOs. Small enterprises don't have, they don't even understand what a CIO is. So how can you be a virtual CIO to them and truly understand? And in this case, this is what we're trying to do in Geo, is to bring together those bouquet of products and services which we believe are required for running a small clinic, which we believe is required for running a small salon. A salon wants with the COVID time frame, you want to have appointment so that there's not a waiting queue. Somebody wants a jukebox for people to choose their music. There are you want a CRM, you want to wish a customer to say that it's 4 months since you've done your last haircut. So now all of these, if you start telling the customer you want a CRM, he wouldn't know. That salon guy hasn't even heard of the word CRM. So how do you solve for business problems of the customers? By sitting down and deeply creating vertical solutions, but not one solution, mind you, because again, they don't have the wherewithal to manage something for productivity, something for attendance, something for CRM. So how do you package it all together and say, I have done that hard work, treat me as a virtual CIO and engage with me? And we've kind of opened a series of what we call as digital advisors who are available to these customers to kind of say, okay, I will help you get your website up. Oh, by the way, I will help you link your website with your Facebook handle or your LinkedIn handle. Unless we do that investment, you'll always see B2B SaaS players not having a base of 500. And I think companies such as us have that ability. We have a national presence, and uh, we are taking this bouquet of services, some which we are building ourselves, some which we are taking good B2B companies who have kind of created a great product, great IP, but they don't know how to sell or reach. We're taking that to our customers and then spending significant time in not selling a CRM, in not selling a modern workplace, but actually saying that, boss, for running a clinic, for running a salon, this is what you need, and I'm solving for that.
That's absolutely wonderful because, as you correctly mentioned, the solutions have to reach the customer and make sense for him rather than the customer seeking out. And that won't work. And those portfolio approach or a custom portfolio approach will absolutely work wonders for an India which, despite whatever we say, still exists on a spectrum or a continuum of digital maturity. So therefore, it has to make sense for everybody. And thanks for bringing that flavor into the conversation. So moving forward, Praveen, while we talk about a lot of these digital technologies and stuff, and Prateek spoke about CRM being there, and there are some IoT solutions there and some cloud solutions there, and oftentimes they come from various partners, various players, and it might not be so easy to get them to talk to each other. So please talk to us on the view around, let's say, standards, interoperability, interconnects, and are they also important for the digital India of the future?
Right. Sushant, I'm not on the telco or the hardware side of things, so I can't talk too much to that side of the world. But I can talk from a more software perspective and from where Microsoft comes, right? And we are part of some of these councils where a lot of these things are discussed and aligned upon with some of the other folks out there, including other hardware providers or even telcos out there, right? So Um, but from a more from a software interoperability perspective, right? So we are always conscious of helping enable our customers to effectively use the tech stack that they have in their own enterprise, in their own premises. It doesn't have to be Microsoft all the time. We understand and are aware that customers have a choice, and they think through what is the best fit for them. So our intent has always been to help ensure that we provide that openness to the extent possible when they work with the Microsoft stack, right? And helping ensure that they can seamlessly integrate with what they have already, and also leverage what they have to the maximum extent possible. And again, going back to what Pratik was talking about, right? It's taking a more sort of that business focus and industry focus, and how can we help customers better solve their business problems, and focusing on that rather than saying, hey, do you need a CRM, or do you need to move what you have to the cloud, right? It's not about that. What is that you're really looking to solve for, and coming in to help solve for that. And there, that interoperability becomes pretty critical, right? Making sure that we understand what is that the customer needs, and really looking to work with them to help solve that business problem rather than forcing a technology on them, right? So that's how we look at it right now. And I'll leave it there, right? We can talk about a bunch of other examples around it, but in the interest of time, Sushant, I'll return it back to you.
Sushant, if I can add to it from a more telco point of view, I think open infrastructure or certain standards, in my view, have to be evolved in India if India has to scale up. If you really pick up, for example, any IoT project, and that's what we are seeing, whether it is connected cars or asset tracking, or unfortunately, I think one of the reasons why we are struggling to scale is the lack of available manufacturing of many of these equipments in India. Most cases, it's imported. Secondly, these equipments are not interoperable at all, right? And we run into all kinds of issues, including compatibility with service providers and so on and so forth. Not to mention, of course, there are major security concerns for many of this equipment. In fact, if I have to give you another example, there is literally like 10 different standards of charging which is available for electric cars globally, right? So I think it's sometimes important that while I do believe that standards should get evolved sometimes by the free market, but again, I think some standards should get evolved through some government minimum standards as well.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So sometimes they will evolve organically. Sometimes industry will come together. Sometimes it will have to be mandated by the government. But having consistent standards actually provide that certainty for various ecosystem players to invest in that particular area. And therefore, as you covered, Praveen, from a software perspective, and Kartik from a telco perspective, those standards and interoperability models would be fairly important for us to turbocharge the growth. So that point is fairly well taken. So moving to Prakash, I was just hoping to take your views around the risk side of the equation, right, Prakash? While we spoke about value creation and we heard about so many use cases, but the more you expand your use case universe, bigger is the canvas which you are allowing for somebody to come and attack or exploit and so on. So, Prakash, if you can share your thoughts on how enterprises need to think about their security postures or security practices as they are also investing heavily in emerging technologies.
Yeah, this is a very good question. It can be the a security framework well done can be the catalyst for a digital transformation. A limited failure can completely put you back, right? So security is the key. But the good news is the modern security frameworks and technologies have really caught up and kept pace and is truly complementary and helping in a large extent. But then it is the power of the human intellect which can both create and destroy, right? So it is always going to be a catch-up game, right? So I won't say that someone could insulate themselves completely from security risk. These risks are real, but then the risk can be planned. And a lot of organizations, I'm sure the people sitting on the same call, they run such a massive operations on the digital scale, and they are able to protect the privacy, they are able to protect their digital assets, they are able to protect the customers digital assets comfortably for a decade now, right? So I think, I don't want people to look at risk. At the same time, I don't want to say it is not a risk. It is a risk, right? In anything, when the child learns to walk, the child will fall, right? But the child doesn't give up, right? I think that's the same kind of a spirit with which one has to go. There are challenges, but there are plenty of success story, and plenty of tools. Modern architectures are very supportive. I mentioned briefly in my earlier conversation around something called the zero trust foundation. I think that is a sort of an inevitable standard framework people are using, and a lot of tools come in to help customers build that, the role, the device, what you do, how the access gets controlled. Second is a sort of a role-based network access to make sure that it is not where you are. Prateek rightly said, it's like people work from home. 40,000 homes are going to become your next enterprise, right? So you really can't decide a zero and security operation which does not take that into consideration. So you have to evolve it into a role-based access control, and technologies do exist. It's interesting that as organizations are moving their data centers into the cloud framework, security like firewall are also going onto cloud. So we clearly see the emergence of architectures like SASE, which are helping organization protect their digital assets which are there on the cloud, thereby making sure that there are no risk associated with your journey towards the cloud. So it will always be a hybrid world. One has to have the right kind of tools, and you have to get a judicious balance between the kind of tools that you deploy. Some tools are deployed at the edge point, or the endpoint device that you use. Some are deployed on the transport, and some are deployed on the data centers or the centers of data like the cloud, where your data really resides. Risk, but at the same time the risk can be mitigated by technology, and that's brilliance of the human intellect today. If they could connect, they can transform you to the cloud, and they can protect, give you AI and insights. They can also protect you. So I'm extremely optimistic about mitigating the risk, and that should not be a showstopper for anybody to embark on a digital transformation journey.
Thank you so much, Prakash, for sharing that. So now, pretty much last 5 minutes of our conversation. So 30-second rapid fire. If you were to, you pretty much had a magic wand, and you were looking at key enablers to further accelerate India's journey on the digital path. What are the top two things that will come to your mind? So rapid fire mode, starting with Kartik. Kartik, your thoughts, please, and we'll go around the circle now.
I think a couple of things that comes to my mind. One is, I think definitely what will turbocharge is what I kind of spoke initially, was some sort of a minimum standards to be defined for security and devices. I think that will really give a flip to not just make in India, but also ensure saying that we are able to really scale up. I think the other thing is also, keep some of the policy things more flexible, so that it can kind of accommodate a whole lot of cases. Technology is, rapidly evolving, and some of the, policy and structure, especially around M2M IoT, can get rapidly, backdated. And hence, it's extremely important for, all stakeholders to kind of keep an open mind on that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks. No, absolutely. So more flexible policy to turbocharge, and of course standards. So Prateek, over to you. What are two bullet points, two key asks if you had a magic wand?
So very quickly, one, since connectivity is the bedrock of digital transformation, I think we need to start treating connectivity as utility, which means the right-of-way charges, which are prohibitive in some of the big cities. If you truly have to take fiber to the customer and fiber to the every nook and corner, home or enterprise, I think we need right-of-way charges to be completely significantly brought down, because that's what will help get fiber to the customer. The second, I think, clearly we have to ensure that we have a very, very vibrant startup ecosystem. These are the guys who are going to create products that appeal to a small medium business, that appeal to a large enterprise. And I think favorable policies towards startup ecosystem, that's going to be the single biggest driver for kind of driving this transformation change.
Thank you, Prateek. Praveen, your top 2 points, please.
Very quick. Sorry. So very quickly, right? I think. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So to summarize, if you had a magic wand and you had 2 key asks to turbocharge India's journey on this digital path, what will be those 2 points from your side?
Yes. Yeah. So one is continuing to message around the cloud, right? The world is moving towards the cloud, and helping adoption of the cloud as the tool or the framework for enabling digital tools, right? So that's one. The second is around ensuring continued clarity around data privacy, and helping bring clarity around that, right? So that we use data the right way, and we protect protect the data which is in the country in the right way, right? I think those two would continue to be key drivers for how we are looking at digital adoption.
Thank you, Praveen. Last 30 seconds, Prakash, top 2 points from your side as we conclude.
Yeah, I come from the wireless side, so I have one ask. I think wireless 6 for very long has revolved around the 2.4 gigahertz and 5. 39 countries around the world and FTC have deregulated the 6 gigahertz and seen the creation of Wi-Fi 6E standard. I really want my India to be ready to embrace 6E standards, because that will really make sure that more devices can get connected, higher speed becomes real, better performance, and extremely low latency will become possible in the traditional Wi-Fi 6 environment. And that's my wish for India.
Perfect. Thank you. And pretty much on time then. Thank you so much, dear panelists, for your time today. I think we covered a fair ground in terms of how innovation is panning out in all these areas, how it is creating value. We also spoke about the role of telcos and how it is changing, and it's not just a semantic change. We spoke about how this is now pretty much something they have to do. It's no longer an option. It's pretty much a done deal. You pretty much have to be on it as you move forward. We spoke about the ecosystem. We also spoke about the standards, the way they are being implemented. We also briefly touched upon the angle around creating the portfolio of services for the customer rather than keeping a product centric view and trying to find out the customers around that. And finally, we also got some time to cover the risk element around that and how cyber defense and security would be important for us to protect the value which is getting created. I really enjoyed my time on this panel today. It's not every day you get in touch with industry leaders coming in together and sharing their thoughts. I must thank all of you for sparing time today and sharing your insights with the audience tonight. Thank you.